Hello, I'm Doug Ballinger. I'm Logan's dad, and welcome to another episode of Logan's Voice. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up with something heavy on my mind. If you've been following along with me, you know that I usually focus on fentanyl because fentanyl is the poison that took my son Logan's life. It's the drug that has changed the story for so many families like mine. It's the crisis everyone is just now starting to wake up to. But here's what I need you to understand: fentanyl is not the end of the story. It isn't the last monster we're going to face. It's just the one we're staring at right now. And while communities are still trying to wrap their minds around fentanyl, there's another wave forming right behind it. Stronger, stranger, and even less understood. Let me put this into perspective. Years ago, heroin was the big concern. Don't get me wrong, heroin was deadly, addictive, and it destroyed lives. But it was also, in a way, predictable. People knew what they were using. Then fentanyl came along, and it was like a bomb went off. Suddenly, the same dose that somebody thought they could handle became fatal. Suddenly, counterfeit pills flooded the market. Ones made to look like Percocet, Xanax, or Adderall, all pressed with fentanyl. Young people started dying after taking what they thought was one pill to help them sleep, or one pill at a party. Logan wasn't naive. He wasn't a one pill and gone victim. He had substance use disorder. And like so many others, he was caught in the grip of addiction. But the supply he was using was poison. That last dose wasn't what he thought it was. It was a cocktail: cocaine, fentanyl, xylazine. He never stood a chance. Now imagine this: fentanyl is already killing more than 100,000 people a year in this country. And yet there are drugs even stronger than fentanyl already moving into the supply. That's the wildfire racing toward us, even as we're trying to still put out the last fire. Today, I want to talk about these new threats, the next wave, because if we don't start raising awareness now, more families will get the same phone call I did. And I don't want anyone else to join this club of grief. The first substance I want to talk about is something called nitazines. The name sounds like something out of science fiction novel, but nitazines are very real and they're very deadly. These drugs were first developed back in the 1950s by pharmaceutical companies as potential painkillers. But here's the thing: they were never approved for medical use. Why? Because even then, scientists realized they were too dangerous, too powerful, too unpredictable. And now, decades later, they've been pulled out of the shadows and pushed into the illegal market. Some forms of nitazines are 20 to 40 times more potent than fentanyl. Just let that sink in for a moment. Fentanyl is already about 50 times stronger than heroin. And now we're talking about a drug that leaves fentanyl in the dust. We're starting to see nitazine show up in Ohio, Tennessee, and Florida, and other states. Sometimes they're mixed with fentanyl, sometimes they're pressed into counterfeit pills, and sometimes they're sold as if they were something else entirely. The scariest part: most toxicology labs don't even test for nitazines yet, which means families often don't know what really killed their loved one. The death certificate might just say fentanyl or opioid overdose, but in reality, it could have been a nitazine, something even stronger, something that naloxone may not fully reverse. And that's another problem. Narcan still works, but with nitazines, it might take multiple doses, and in some cases, even then, it may not be enough. Imagine a bystander doing everything right, calling 911, giving Narcan, and the person still doesn't make it. That's the terrifying reality that we're up against. That is why I'm saying there's no safe experiment with today's street drugs. You cannot know what you're getting. And with nitazines, the danger is even greater. One try and you could die. Now, let's shift into something that might surprise you: benzodiazepines. These are medications you've probably heard of: Xanax, Valium, Ativan. Normally, they're prescribed for anxiety, insomnia, or seizures. But on the street, what we're seeing more and more counterfeit pills and powders laced with illicit benzos. Things like itazolam and fluprazolam. I can barely even say these words. They're chemicals most people have never heard of. Here's why that's such a problem. Benzos don't respond to naloxone. I'm going to repeat that. Benzos don't respond to naloxone. If someone overdoses on fentanyl, Narcan can often bring them back. But when fentanyl is combined with benzos, the opioid part might be reversed, yet the person can remain unconscious, sedated, and at risk. First responders can see someone's breathing return, but they don't wake up. They may need more support, more oxygen, and a lot more time before they come around. In Canada, this has already become a massive problem. They call it benzodope, and we're still seeing it creep into the U.S. Think about what this means. A young person buys what they think is a Xanax online. They take it, believing it will calm their anxiety. But instead, it's laced with fentanyl and benzos. If they overdose, Narcan cannot bring them back. Their friends may not understand what's happening, and the outcome can be fatal. For families, this is one of the most heartbreaking trends because even those who are prepared, even those carrying Narcan, may find it doesn't work the way they expect. And once again, the loved one never even knew what was in the pill. Next, I want to revisit two substances that we've talked about before because they're still very much part of the picture. First, carfentanil. It's an elephant tranquilizer. An elephant tranquilizer. Let that sink in. It was never meant for human beings. It's about 100 times more powerful than fentanyl. Just a few micrograms, grains you can barely see, can kill a person. Carfentanil isn't everywhere, but when it does show up, the results are catastrophic. Entire communities can see spikes in death when just small batches hit the streets. Imagine playing Russian roulette, but instead of one bullet in the chamber, almost all of them are loaded. That's what carfentanil does. Then there's xylazine, better known as tranq. Xylazine isn't even an opioid. It's a veterinary sedative, which means Narcan doesn't reverse it. If someone takes a fentanyl xylazine mix, Narcan might help with the fentanyl part, but the xylazine leaves them sedated, unconscious, and still at risk of dying. And xylazine has another devastating side effect. It causes horrific wounds. People who use it can develop necrotic tissue, skin and muscle that dies and rots. Some end up losing limbs. It's one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. This is close to home for me. Xylazine was in Logan's toxicology report. It wasn't listed as the cause of death, but it was there, mixed in with the fentanyl and cocaine. My son never even knew. He never had a chance. And that's the reality for so many families. Their loved one wasn't choosing xylazine or carfentanil. They thought they were buying something else, but what they got was poison. So here's what I need you to take away from this episode. Fentanyl is not the end. It's not the last thing we're going to face. It's just one part of an evolving, poisoned drug supply. Now, we're dealing with nitazines, opioids, even stronger than fentanyl. We're dealing with benzos mixed into opioids, making overdoses harder to reverse. And we're dealing with carfentanil, powerful enough to drop an elephant. And we're dealing with xylazine, which doesn't respond to Narcan and leaves people scarred for life. This is not just about addiction. This is about poisoning. This is about a supply that is so unpredictable, so deadly, that no one is safe experimenting with it. So what can you do? Carry naloxone. Even if it takes more, it's still the best chance we have. Support harm reduction, things like test strips and Good Samaritan laws. Talk about this with your kids, your family, your community. because silence is what lets this crisis spread. If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps push these conversations out to more people who need to hear the truth. Every time you hit that share button, you're helping to save lives. You're helping to end stigma. I share Logan's stories so that you'll know the truth, so that you'll be aware, so that maybe, just maybe, another parent won't get the call that I did. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not be silent.